Good day, good afternoon, wherever you are joining us from. Thank you for joining. This is another edition of Budget in Focus 2025. And with me today, I have none other than the Honorable Mohabir Anil Nandlall, Senior Counsel, Attorney General, and Minister of Legal Affairs, who will share his views on the budget, which was presented yesterday by Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance and public service, the Honorable Dr. Ashni Singh, who presented a $1.38 billion budget
Trillion,
yesterday.
trillion.
Trillion, $1.38 trillion, my apologies, budget yesterday with some 90 billion in relief measures. So, Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, thank you for joining me today. And right after the presentation of the budget, you would have described it as the most people centered budget. So tell us why and how does the budget cater for the people?
Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this discussion. So, the budget was presented by our distinguished Minister with responsibility for finance yesterday afternoon. And as the budget was being presented, information was streaming non-stop on the social media and on the conventional media. And since the end of the presentation, tons of information have been disseminated in relation to the budget, both on the social media and in the conventional media. So, everyone who is interested in acquainting themselves with the budget and the budgetary measures would have already done so. In particular, they would have zeroed in to the areas that they find important to their peculiar and particular interests. So, what we are doing here is essentially simply highlighting certain salient aspects of Budget 2025, and I would also like to, where possible, compare with what existed under the previous administration, as well as to address some critical comments I have seen emanating from opposition elements. So, it is a $1.4 trillion budget. That is a staggering amount of money that is expected to be injected in the Guyanese economy. At no time in our history have we ever had the type of financial injection of that magnitude. So, that by itself is a phenomenon that we will have to deal with. So much money circulating in the economy. You have to be extraordinarily daft to form the opinion and then express it publicly that this budget doesn't cater for the people. Wherever you live, whether you're employed or unemployed, a financial injection of the magnitude of 1.4 trillion over a 12-year period will positively impact your life and the lives of every single Guyanese, whether they participate actively in the economy or they're simply bedridden and play no functional part of the economic equation of the country. The sheer mammoth nature of the financial injection will touch their lives. So that's the first thing. Secondly, this money, most of it, will be spent on activities that will occur within the territory of Guyana. 99% of this $1.4 trillion will be spent in economic, infrastructural, construction, service oriented, you name it, within Guyana. Thousands of workers, hundreds of thousands of workers will obviously benefit. The business community, whether you're selling water or you're selling homes, whether you are in the service industry, whether you are in the agricultural industry, whether you're in the technological industry, whether you're in the sugar industry, whichever industry you are engaged in, this money will be spent in that area of activity. And those who are participating at whatever level in the activity will benefit from it.
Right. So,
In terms of, and then you have $90 billion through budgetary measures by simple adjustments to the tax system in the main will release into the pockets of Guyanese of every walk of life $90 billion. This is outside of your salary. This is outside of pensions. This is outside of all your other earnings and revenue stream. By simple adjustments to the taxation system, 90 billion is going to be released to you. Then you have measures such as subsidies that will go into GPL to protect your light bill tariffs from increasing. Government has assured that they will step in by utilizing the various mechanisms available to insulate you from the vicissitudes of prices on the world market, to ensure that you don't suffer an increase in your tariff. Largely, we have been doing that in relation to the importation of fuel. And people don't appreciate these things. If we were to sell fuel at the market value, fuel prices at the pumps would fluctuate drastically. We have stabilized that by fiscal adjustments. I could give you another example. Imports, duties and taxes on imports. Since we came into government as a result of COVID, the cost of shipping, and anybody who got a fleeting familiarity with the industry will know what I'm speaking about. The cost of shipping rose astronomically from somewhere about $4,500 US for a 40-foot container out of China to as high as 18 to 20,000 US during the COVID-19 period. We have adjusted the taxes on importing. We can't control the cost of shipping. We don't own the ships. But what we have done, we have adjusted the taxation system for imported goods to set off the increase so that you get some type of relief from the increase in shipping costs. The budget says that will continue. And another measure I can point to is the abolition of tolls which is scheduled to take place upon the completion of the Berbice, the Demerara River crossing. To cross the Berbice Bridge, I believe a car is about 1,000 and an SUV is about 2,000 or more. That will no longer have to be paid. It means that there should be a decrease in taxi fares and minibus fares. That's more disposable income, adding to that 90 billion to which I've made reference to. And that will happen in Wisma, it will happen in Demerara, and it will happen in Berbice. And then you have a whole regime of direct cash transfers, and they're all listed in the budget. $100,000 for every baby born, beginning, I suppose, from Jan when the budget is passed. Remission to on your income tax rate for every child. A $10,000 disbursement for medical purposes, any checkup. Old age pension doubling from what it was in 2020, from 20,500 to $41,000. So you will hear the argument that, oh, we have oil, and therefore you have money. And the answer to that is yes, we have oil. So we have an additional revenue stream, which we didn't have before. But what are we doing with the money? And that is the question. Are we hiding it in a bank account and boasting to the world that our balance of payment is excellent, that we have X billion dollars in an account and therefore our credit worthiness is strong and resilient? We are doing that. We are doing that. It's a balancing exercise. But most importantly, the largest chunk of that revenue is being spent to improve Guyana infrastructurally, in terms of, and then providing the requisite social services, health, education, water, housing, and doing every other thing to which the budget makes reference. So, in short, we are spending the money on the people of Guyana. They are the main beneficiaries of every single dollar mentioned in that budget. That is where it is going.
Right. Well, thank you, Minister. We know that in 2019, the People's Progressive Party Civic would have presented a manifesto to the electorate before being voted into office. This is the final year for this term of this government's uh, um, period in office. Now, obviously, contrast would be drawn to what the manifesto promised and how the budget has delivered on those promises. What do you say to the naysayers who are out there saying that the party has not fulfilled their manifesto promise, despite the overarching context which you would have described the budget with just now, and given that it is evident that many or all of the manifesto promises were fulfilled. For example, the doubling of the old age pension you would have mentioned, and many other measures that were put in place.
So that's a very good question. Many people, in particular those on the opposition benches, do not understand that electoral politics is based upon trust. and inherent in trust is credibility. So politicians go on a political platform during an election season and they make promises. They say to the electorate, if you elect me, these are the things that I'm going to do. Those things are contained in a manifesto. The manifesto that we prepared was not prepared in abstract and in isolation. We didn't sit down on the upper floor of Freedom House and draft that document. We were in the opposition, and every single day we were in the communities of this country. From Aishalton to Waini, from Crabwood Creek to Charity. Every one of us. And we were talking to people. We were hearing what they want, and we were listening to the cries and their anguish and their pain and their suffering to which they were subject from 2015 to 2020 as a result of policies implemented by the APNU AFC coalition government. We chronicled all those materials. And then, as the time came close to election, we held public consultations in Essequibo, in Demerara, in Berbice, specifically to discuss what we should put in our manifesto. And those confabulations produced recommendations. Those were the recommendations that we examined, and those that we knew that we could deliver, we incorporated them in the manifesto. Why I emphasize that? Because in Guyana, there is a culture, particularly on the opposition side, of making promises that are only intended to induce voting. In other words, it's a con game for many politicians on the other side. So they make ridiculous promises and they appeal to the gullibility of certain people. And in 2015, a lot of people believed it. So they told the sugar workers that they will double their income. What did they do? They closed down the industry. Knock off 7,500 sugar workers. They told the rice farmers that they will get $9,000 a bag for paddy. When they got in the government, they told the rice farmers through the president himself, rice is private business. They took the rice, sold it to Panama, never collected a cent. 7 million US. Indebted. Rice farmers' money, rice millers' money. They just give the Panamanians. We had to go to court and get it back. They told the people that they are going to reduce taxation right across the board. They drop a whopping 200 additional taxes on the backs of the Guyanese people. Right? They went to the university and they said to the university students, we are going to reduce tuition and we are going to create jobs for you when you graduate. What did they do? They increased tuition fees. And when the reporter asked the president, what do you tell the UG graduates about job creation? He said they could go to Stabrook Market and sell cocoa rice and plantain chips. Right? They told the miners that they're going to give them tax concessions. What did they do? They impose higher taxes. and impose taxes on mining equipment that used to be duty free. They did that for the agriculture sector as well. So I can go through a series of promises that were made and people were duped, and when they got into government, none were delivered. In fact, the opposite was done. The opposite was done. We, on the other hand, and that is why people want to know, after 75 years, why we are still the most effective political party in this country. It is because there are certain foundation pillars upon which our party is built and from which we will never depart. The leadership and members. One of them is credibility and trust. Never violate your credibility, never violate the trust of the electorate. So when people want $1 million in cash transfer, we said no. We are not going to promise that. The other side promising. We said no. We are not going to promise that. We are going to, when we get in, look at the economic equation, look at the financial streams, and we will commit to different types of cash transfers to different category of population. We can't commit to a fixed sum, and we can't make it universal or national. We will deal with pockets of people. And if we reach a stage where we can do it nationally, well, then we will do it. And that's exactly what we have done. We have to restore the cash grants that they took away. And yet you will hear how they love the children of this country. They took away the cash grant. We have moved it from 10,000 to 50,000. And that is what we promised. We promised 50,000 new house lots. We will surpass that before the year is finished. We promised how many scholarships? I can't remember. We have surpassed the number of scholarships. We have removed tuition fee from the University of Guyana. Removed it. You will hear them say, oh, the Burnham had bankrupted the country. That's the difference. We ensure that if we remove it, it is sustainable. It is feasible to do so. They may ask, oh, did you do a feasibility study? That's all that they know. Pay hundreds of millions of dollars to do feasibility studies. You know what you do a feasibility study in relation to? Something whose success is in doubt. A project whose feasibility is not assured. That's why you do feasibility. They don't understand that concept up to now. That's why the thing named feasibility study is if you are doubtful if a project is feasible or not. Is it doubtful that we have to build a bridge across the Mara River because this one that we have falling apart? You need a feasibility study to tell you whether we should have a new bridge? You're dealing with deranged people. And that is why the electorate of this country will never elect them again. So I sidetrack a little. Let me get back to the question that you asked, the manifesto. So, speaking for myself, in my study at home, I have a PPP manifesto on my desk. And I read it ever so often. And I am sure that I speak for the collective in our government. Because that is the pledge that we made to the people. That is the pact upon which we were elected to govern. And we deliver on all our promises. So the projects that we are pursuing and the manner in which we are pursuing them and which one we decide to do and which one we will not do are not dictated by our own caprice. They are what the people were promised. And that is why you have a whole body of people out there who are armchair generals and they want to be the policy makers of this country. And they want to tell you what to do. And when we ignore them, they get caustic. And they write nasty things in the newspapers that they control. What they don't understand is that we have a duty to the electorate who voted for us. I am not even sure that they voted for us. It's not that we don't listen to people who vote for us, but we made promises to the electorate. We didn't make promises to PPP supporters alone. We made promise to the electorate. We made promise to every single Guyanese voter. Now, if they didn't vote for us, that's their business. But we made, I spoke about trust and commitment and and trust and credibility. Not because you didn't vote for us, we are going to damage our credibility and not deliver to you. We do politics based on principles and not political whims and fancy. Of course, we have real politics too. And we have to look after our constituents. We are not blinded to that political realism. But, as I said, we are a responsible grouping of people. And we know that we have to carry this country on our shoulders. The history of Guyana has shown that whenever the PPP is out of government, the country decays. There is economic decline. There is social disorder. There is a breakdown of democracy and the rule of law. When the PPP is in government, there is economic prosperity. There is social cohesion. There is law and order in the country. Whether you want to accept that or not, that is what the history of this country records and has recorded. And that's the difference between the two governments. So, we have delivered on almost every single promise that we have made. And in many cases, we have exceeded those promises. We have gone and done things that, major things, that we may not have specifically promised, but would have been part of our policy imperatives. So we promised cheap electricity. We promised alternative sources of power to fossil fuel. We promised that. We may have had in mind solar power. We have had in mind hydropower. And we still do. And we still have those on the agenda. But we have moved to a gas to shore project that will guarantee reliable supply of electricity and natural gas, as well as bring the cost of electricity that is so exorbitant in Guyana to an acceptable level that will trigger our manufacturing and processing potential in the agricultural industry, in the forestry sector, in the mining sector, and in all the other sectors. We are only primary producers. We need to elevate our production to a different level. Why we have not been able to do it? Because it has not been feasible because of the cost of energy. Once we are able to bring that cost factor down, then Guyana will, then you will see the boom. Fuel, oil and gas is not our true potential. That's not our true um, greatest natural resource. Agriculture is. And our other natural resources and the capabilities that we have in those sectors. So, unlike other political parties, we steadfastly ensure that we deliver our promises. So that when we go to the electorate at an election time, we can say to them, you have elected us based on these promises and we have delivered them to you. And we are coming back to you for you to renew our mandate to continue to deliver these new sets of promises now, because we plan to make a new set of promises having delivered on these.
Right. And as we are on the point, Minister, the leader of the opposition has specifically said that this is the worst budget. And presidential hopeful and leader of the Alliance for Change, Mr. Nigel Hughes, has also criticized the budget. He has described it as an election campaign presentation. Now, taking into context all that you would have explained and elaborated on, how would you respond to these criticisms of the budget?
I'm disappointed in that vacuous statement of Aubrey Norton. Nigel Hughes, in my respectful view, is an utter disappointment. And those who had great expectations in him, no doubt, are experiencing that disappointment. With each passing day, he says something that is more bizarre than the previous day. And I have said elsewhere that the same argument that 33 is not a majority of 65 typifies the gentleman's mentality. The fact that you can think that and then hold a press conference on your own volition and say it publicly and then prepare a legal opinion and give a government, you lack serious judgment. And I've done a program in which I've explained all of these things. The position he takes on the oil and gas sector, it lacks common sense. So this guy is in a special category. It's an election, what he said?
It's an election campaign presentation. The presentation of the budget yesterday.
So we are going to an election. We know that. The budget of any election year must bear some relationship with the election, a major political event. You have to be utterly dumb as a politician not to recognize the relationship between an election and the budget that will be presented in that election year. You have to be an utter idiot not to recognize that kind of connection. So that's the first thing I want to say. But let us examine the budget. This budget, as I said, as I've been saying for the past 30 minutes, is a product of our manifesto. It is a continuation of what we have been doing since 2020 when we assumed office. The housing drive is expanding. The infrastructural boom is expanding. The digitization of government is what we promised. That is unfolding. The Agriculture sector is expanding because that is in keeping with our food security objectives. So which one is electioneering? We have said our cash grant we have increased. We have increased pensions. These things have been increasing every year. Salaries have been increasing every year. We have been giving more social and ameliorating benefits every year. And as our revenue stream increases, so they will increase. So anything that that guy says, when you subject it to any degree of probe, you realize how ridiculous it is. Norton says that the budget is what?
It's the worst budget.
My God. You know, what is conspicuously absent in our political culture is the ability to recognize a good measure from your political opponent, or a good statement, or a good posture, or a good position. Recognize it. And you are able to maintain your own credibility. You see, it goes back to credibility and trust. Credibility and trust means nothing to these people. They are political con men. So they make promises that they know that they can't keep. All they want is to fool you to vote for them. That is what they want. So rather than say that it's a good budget, but this could have been added, this could have been taken out, and do an analysis that gives you some kind of credibility in the eyes, if not the government supporters, the PPP supporters, at least in your own support, from your own supporters. Give them something to work with. How can you tell your constituents that the budget is the worst budget ever when they are hearing that they will get $90 billion and they are hearing how? It is no secret that traditionally, I hope that it has changed, that the public sector employees are opposition supporters by and large. The tax adjustments, every single one of them who are in the public sector will benefit from that. And this budget is worse than the one that you passed where you imposed 200 tax measures. The budget is worse than where you tax the mule cart man. Remember they passed a tax on mule? You know mule is an extinct animal. There's no mule in Guyana. When they don't tax everything, they search for an animal that is not no longer in existence and they clap a tax for the animal. And this guy got the audacity and temerity to say publicly that this is the worst budget ever. That's the point I am making. These guys, they care not for their credibility. They care not for people's confidence. They care not for public trust. They're just a bunch of hustlers. If they get in the government, they get in. Look at their fanaticism at GCOM. That's all they're doing whole day, trying to tinker with the voting system to see how they can slip in through the back door. That's all they're concerned about. So, you will get these types of verbiage and useless rhetoric from these political leaders. Nothing constructive.
Well, Minister, it may be that they have not taken the time to scrutinize the budget in its entirety as yet because the budget was presented yesterday.
But Richard, it's better you stay quiet and people think that you're intelligent than you rush in where wise men would dare not enter. Wait until you read the budget. You don't have to rush and say anything, right?
Right. So on that point, actually, and diving into the budget, I know that you will do so in the future as the debates will be held shortly, and you will at other public platforms as well. You will get into the nitty gritty of the budget and your sector. But what I wish for you to do now, because many persons, are they do not take the time to look at the measures for themselves. They rely on hearsay in some cases, and if the opposition is, for example, saying that this is the worst budget yet, somebody who might not have even read the budget would say that yes, indeed, it is the worst budget yet, and that bandwagon effect is created there. But if we are to go through some of the measures, for example, you mentioned the doubling of old age pension from 2020 to now. That will obviously put more disposable income or cash. It's a social benefit to in the hands of pensioners. We have the the assistance, public assistance for persons living with disabilities has been increased from 19,000 to 22,000. The school children voucher is now at 50,000, and there's an additional 5,000 for uniforms. There's a $10,000 universal health voucher for every
Every guy
Guyanese,
is.
and mothers or new mothers and will receive this 100,000 cash grant when they give birth. There is a 9 billion allocated in the budget to ease the burden of the rising cost of living. You've mentioned the increase in the income tax threshold to 130,000 and the reduction of the PAYE to 25% as opposed to 28%.
28%.
And all of these clearly
And
have.
another one that you should add, because when you go there, you meet a lot of people with NIS issues.
Right.
So a budgetary allocation totaling several billions,
10 billion.
10
Yeah,
billion I
yes,
think,
yes.
has been made for the NIS scheme. And what is the intent of this allocation? Many people may not have reached the 750 required contributions. This budgetary measure is to allow persons who have made 500 and over, so between 500 contributions and 750, that category of persons who would have received no NIS will now get benefit from a lump sum payment based upon how much contributions you would have made. Now that simple measure will reward tens of thousands of old people, NIS pensioners. They call me from New York, they call me from Brooklyn, from Washington, all over Canada, and I hope that they're listening. So, and it has always appeared to be an unfair thing that you miss a couple of contributions and you don't get anything. Here it is that the government has seen the injustice in that situation and is now rectifying it.
Right, and these are measures.
So let me just go back. How, no other budget in the history of this country has ever done that. And yet it's the worst budget. I'm just showing you how these guys are disgracing themselves by the public utterances that they make. And why do they say so? Simply because they are too small minded, they are too envious, they are too myopic, they lack the magnanimity to say to the government or to say publicly, this is a good budget. But, you have to criticize. You're the opposition. We don't expect you to embrace the budget. But be sensible. Richard, at the end of the day, I love this country. And I love the people of this country. And I know, no matter what I do or what the PPP does, we are not going to get 100% people to vote for us in the country. That's impossible. So you're going to have a constituency out there who are Guyanese who will want another leader to represent them. And I would like for there to be a sensible, at least an intelligent leader, a leader who is a leader of substance, of credibility, of trust. Because for whatever reason, they have not chosen my party to pledge their allegiance. They are entitled to proper leadership. And I would like to see that happen. And when you look around the political landscape, unfortunately, outside of the PPP, there is a conspicuous vacuum of the type of quality of leadership that I'm referring to.
Yeah. Why I raise the point in relation to the measures is because oftentimes we have heard the government described as one which implements concrete policy, not figuratively in the sense that they many people say this is a sandstone and cement government from the opposition, but these measures are social measures which were improved upon based on previous budgets presented by this government, as well as new measures, new social measures.
So let us deal with the sand, stone, and cement argument. You know, in the Caribbean, in particular in Trinidad, we are called the mudland. You know why? Because the place got a lot of mud. All the roads used to be mud road. We, you don't want us to build the road? What we will build it with? Bread, not concrete, cement, and stone, and other material, road building materials. The very people who are speaking and saying that would lament when they travel the road and it doesn't have the very concrete cement and stone. Let a car go in fast in the mud. You can hear what it costs the government. Now, when you do the road, it's concrete and stone. And then the other argument is, oh, your friends and family getting the contract. Now, you can hear that all the time. Let me tell you a couple of things that you will hear. Friends and family and favorite benefiting. Firstly, we would like the entire country to be our friends, family, and favorites. So you can join us. I am making an appeal and an open invitation. Come join the friends, family, and let us all share in the bounty. I am asking you to come on board as the first thing. If you want to stay out, you can't look at us jealously. Let me assume that that is even taking place. Secondly, when you look at the people all around who will benefit, I mean, you're still claiming that you will win the next election, yet the whole country who are benefiting are our family and friends. And you're still hoping to win the election? Still telling people that you will win the election? How? If you, the point I am making to you, anything that they say, you examine it closely. And I can disintegrate anything that they say. So we have no apologies, Richard, as a government, for building the infrastructure of this country. That is what the country requires. What we are doing, what people don't understand, is that we were in decay. We were in the doldrums for 28 years, while every country in the Caribbean, these islands are small rocks in the Caribbean Sea, but their economy is advanced. Their infrastructural environment are advanced. We are starting from way behind. So we have to build as quickly as possible. How you want the country to advance to reach the stage, you'll have to build it out. So that is what we are doing. And we have no apologies. We are going to pave every single road in this country if we have not done it already. We have promised every single child that they will have a quality education, and we are working towards that. We have promised the people of Guyana that they will get primary health care of international standard, and we are working every day to provide that. If it requires using cement and stone, well, then so be it. These are nonsensical arguments. And what was the other thing that you were telling me?
No, I was saying balancing or contrasting these clearly
Yeah, and oh,
social
yes, the
benefits.
other thing is, not only are we doing that,
Right.
look at the number of water treatment plants that we are building across the country. Look how many housing schemes that we are building across the country. Who are benefiting from these things? All these things are PPP supporters. That's your argument. That is the rhetoric that you expect people to believe. The people who they're speaking to, or who they would like to speak to, know differently. But as you said, other than physical infrastructural work and buildings and roads and bridges and hospitals and schools and health centers and water treatment plants, you have direct cash transfers. You have adjustments of the taxation system that inures to more disposable income for every single Guyanese. What more you want from a budget? What more you want from a budget? So you will hear that the budget somehow is racist. And as Ashley Singh was presenting the budget, I was telling one member of the opposition how the measures are deadly racist. You know, how dare you give $100,000 to a baby? Somehow they will find racism in that. And you listen, you wait and see. How come you raise the income tax threshold to 130,000? Somehow in that they will find racism. So you have an opposition who's a hopeless bunch. And unfortunately, they're there. We have to endure them at least until the next election. Um, I hope that the electorate will vote wisely and will elect a different group of people. Certainly, I'm hoping that they will elect the PPP, obviously. But we have to have better representation at the high forum of the National Assembly than we have now. That's certainly my wish. And those who doubt me, just look at the budget debate. Look at the budget debate and judge for yourself the level and quality of the presentations that you will hear from both sides. Listen to the government side and then listen to the opposition, and you make your own judgment.
Now, Honorable Attorney General, before you wrap up, I would just like to give you the opportunity here to cover anything that we would have missed or express your views, any additional views you may have on the budget.
2025 budget, as I said, is the most people centered budget. I have said many times before that this generation of Guyanese is the most fortunate generation of Guyanese in the history of our country. What we are realizing, what we are part of, what we are engaged in, are things that our foreparents dreamt of, they bled for, they sweated for, but never were able to realize it. Our generation is blessed in that we are able to do those things, see those things happen, and be part of the process that is making it happen. Future generations may live a better quality life, but they will be inheriting what we are building now. They will cross the Demerara Harbor Bridge, but they can never say that they were part of the struggle to build it, right? And that's something that we mustn't take for granted. And that's why I speak about being so blessed and being able to be part of this historic, um, groundbreaking period of Guyana's history. 2025 must be situated in that context. And the new revenue stream that we have gotten is Guyana's blessing. And every Guyanese is entitled to benefit from that. It's the people's resources. The budget, and that is why the budget doesn't in any form or fashion discriminate. It embraces in its fold every single Guyanese from birth to death. From the time you're born, you get 100,000. From birth to death, it embraces every single Guyanese. And every single Guyanese must benefit from it. And every single Guyanese must see the budget as that. I am not saying that it's a perfect document. I'm not saying that it's a perfect document. No document is perfect. I am saying it's an excellent budget. It's an excellent budget. We may have some difficulty managing inflationary implications with this kind of financial injection. But that's more for the economists to do, and they will deal with that. But that's the thing now. We have now, we were, when I entered the parliament, the entire national budget, I believe the first year, was 127 billion. 127 billion is one ministry's budget now. And that's how we have transformed. And every Guyanese is entitled to share his success. And Budget 2025, I believe, goes a far way in bringing every Guyanese on board with its regime of measures, policies, and projects that it will unfold when it is being implemented.
All right. Well, thank you, Honorable Attorney General, for joining me here today to taking time off to go through the budget and expressing your articulate and elaborate views. With me today, I had none other than the Honorable Mohabir Anil Nandlall, Senior Counsel, Attorney General, and Minister of Legal Affairs, describing what he sees as the most people-centered budget. Thank you for joining us wherever you're from and wherever you're looking at this program from, and look out for the next episode.